Up next is episode 45 of Veteran on the Move. I'm talking with Josh Steinman, a naval officer who founded Penance Hall, an American-made luxury sock company.
Hey, this is Antonio Centeno of Real Men, Real Style, and you're listening to Veteran on the Move with Joe Crane.
Welcome to Veteran on the Move. If you're a veteran in transition, an entrepreneur wannabe, or someone still stuck in that JOB trying to escape, this podcast is dedicated to your success. And now, your host, Joe Crane.
Josh Steinman is a naval officer currently serving with the Chief of Naval Operations Rapid Innovation Cell, where he leads Project Ocean AR, the Navy's effort to operationalize off-the-shelf augmented reality technology, and is also a leading advocate for opening a Department of Defense embassy in Silicon Valley. In his spare time, he started a small American-made luxury sock company called Penance Hall, funded via Kickstarter in January of 2014. Josh, thanks for being here today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing in the Navy?
Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here. So I currently serve on active duty with the Chief of Naval Operations Rapid Innovation Cell. We're a group of 10 junior enlisted and junior officers who identify and test cutting-edge technology and recommend how to implement it into the fleet. Specifically, I help lead the Navy's efforts on bringing augmented reality to mainstream use within the Navy.
Augmented reality. So what's the Navy looking at doing with augmented reality?
Our experiment, which is called Project Ocean Air, is taking Google Glass and putting it on a Navy ship. So there's a whole bunch of cool stuff we can do with it. We can overlay a compass. We can pipe in GPS information. We can pipe in AIS information, which is AIS is a global database that shows the location of commercial merchant vessels. Whole bunch of really interesting stuff we can do. And Google Glass isn't really true augmented reality. It's more what we call assisted reality, meaning that there's a small display and occasionally it can reference objects in front of you, but really it's kind of just a small heads-up display. But the purpose of our project is to show that with just a little bit of money and commercial off-the-shelf technology, that we can provide force multipliers to warfighters, either on ships or in air wings, really anywhere in the fleet at a very low cost.
Sounds like some pretty high-speed Star Wars stuff.
Well, kind of, but it's actually a lot easier than you think. Google Glass is programmed with a version of Android, which is a Google mobile operating system. And really, it's no different than kind of downloading applications from a Google Play or an iTunes store, and then just uploading them to a heads-up display. So what we're trying to do is just show the Admiralty and show the fleet that cutting-edge technology is here, we can use it, and if we really want to be successful in the future, the way that we're going to do that is by creating open architectures and using commercially available technology and repurposing it for our own use.
Yeah, in your bio, it mentions is it the innovation cell that's pushing for a DoD quote embassy to be located near Silicon Valley?
Yeah, that's right. That's another one of the initiatives that I am. I don't want to say leading. There's a lot of people involved with the process, but I gave a speech back at the Defense Entrepreneurs Forum in the fall, advocating for this concept, which we've been hearing about for several years from our contacts in Silicon Valley, who at the very executive level have had problems with very senior people from the DoD coming out and having great conversations and then leaving, and there not being any real coherent follow-up, or perhaps attempted follow-up kind of gets dropped because people are going on deployments, or there's not a real clear way to integrate with the Pentagon, and it's really hard to navigate the defense acquisition community. So our proposal is to have a permanent touch point in Silicon Valley that handles travel for all senior executives, general officers, flag officers, SESs that are coming out to the Valley, and it ensures continuity, and then it also would serve to educate the technology industry in Silicon Valley about DoD requirements, DoD procedures, what technology readiness levels are, and that in itself is really kind of obscure, but TRL, or technology readiness level, is a way in which the Department of Defense evaluates certain technologies. It takes a long time to get through from TRL 1 to TRL, I believe it's 10. And 10 is when it's like a program of record, like the F-35 or something that gets funded by Congress, but 1 is very close to an idea. And so it's really hard to communicate that stuff to Silicon Valley. And we think that putting people there, physically there, who can go to the events, who can take meetings, who can take notes when senior people come in, is going to be a great way to build a bridge. And we want to be able to replicate it in other places as well, in Boston and in North Carolina and in Salt Lake City and in Seattle and elsewhere.
The acquisition process, especially like in terms of aircraft or ships, any large, very, very expensive items. I mean, the acquisition process for the DoD is just horrendous, to say the least, and very long-winded. And we live in such a time where the rapid, quick technology. I mean, by the time something makes it through the typical acquisition process, it's almost out of date. So there's been a lot of off-the-shelf type activity going on since September 11th, really. Mm-hmm. And of course, that also opens things up to abuse and following the money trail and that kind of stuff. So it's interesting challenges associated with that. But it kind of reminds me of there's a previous episode we had about talking about technology transfer from our universities around the country. And you have all these universities that come up with some great ideas and great things, but they're not in the business of taking products to market. So they actually look for entrepreneurs and or companies to come in and take these great ideas and vet them and then take them to market and hopefully make money off of them. The universities want their ideas to make money, to further improve grant funding and actually getting a royalty off of the things they produce. So it sounds like a similar concept where if you've got DoD folks there with their finger on the pulse of Silicon Valley, and when something comes up, at least the folks in Silicon Valley know who to go to push their idea towards the DoD if that were the case.
That's absolutely right.
So in the course of doing, you're doing some pretty interesting things within the Navy and for the DoD, and in the course of all that, you kind of get this entrepreneurial spirit going. Is that why you kind of ventured out on your own with your own little with your own venture that you have going, or have you always considered yourself an entrepreneur? Well,
I'd say that there are two things that I really love, and that is calculated risks and solving problems. And so in the middle of my last deployment, I found myself with some extra time in the evenings, which was rare, at least in my experience, but I had some extra time. And I started playing around with ideas for starting something that I would own. And I went through one idea, and that kind of failed to materialize, but it's kind of a longer story. I had an idea for a video game. And then through a sort of very long process, I came to this idea of socks. And I knew that it might be complicated, but it wasn't going to be complex, meaning like there are 8 or 9 different steps that I have to go through to get a pair of socks to a customer. But those 8 or 9 things are like known. There's no real challenging variables there. And so unlike building a video game where, I don't understand the programming languages, or, there may be problems with legal authorizations or any number of other things, socks seemed like a really great way to just start something that I would own. And if it failed, I'd be responsible. And if it succeeded, I'd be responsible. And that's kind of how I came to the sock business.
So, and you refer to it as luxury socks. I mean, I got to ask, are luxury socks those socks that my kids are always wanting to buy, those sports socks where some genius marketing guy at this company decided to have a left sock and a right sock, so when the kid puts a hole in one or loses one, you got to buy a whole new set?
Something like that. So the way that we describe our socks is that they are just the best socks that you can buy that are completely American made. And what I mean by that is that we use fine merino wool. Fine merino is a specific size. It's a width of the thread. It's around 18.5 to 19 microns. For example, cotton is around 15 or 16 microns. That's what makes it feel soft. Wool that you would get in a sort of itchy sweater is probably going to be around 26 to 28 microns, sometimes even up to 30 microns. So when people think that like wool is itchy or scratchy, the reason is because the fibers are thick. And so our wool is incredibly thin. In fact, people feel our socks and they're skeptical that they're made of merino wool, but it's because the thread is so thin. The only thing that's really thinner is cashmere, which usually comes in around 12 or 13 microns.
Are they 100% wool?
They're not 100%. They are around 68% wool. And then the remainder is nylon and spandex. And the nylon, if you actually, and I never knew this before I started, there's nothing specific. I wasn't a sock guy, meaning that like I wasn't obsessed with it. I liked socks, and that's what got me started. Around my on my deployment, people started identifying me as the sock guy because I brought a bunch of crazy socks on the deployment. And but before then, I wasn't obsessed with socks. I didn't know any of this stuff. Everything I'm about to tell you, I learned just through internet research and by finding people in the industry who were willing to talk to me and tell me about it.
So I got to ask, how'd you get started with the idea of maybe I want to start a company that makes socks?
So I was on deployment and I had to bring some civilian clothes. And in order to kind of stand out, because I was going to be one of the most junior people on the deployment, I decided to bring like crazy socks, Argyle socks, brightly colored socks. It worked. The senior people are regular people. And when they're standing around with other people, they just want something to talk about if it's not going to be business. So people would come up and start talking to me about my socks. And
really?
Yeah, I became known as the sock guy. And look, I like to think of myself as a hard worker. And so from sock guy, people started thinking, oh, maybe sock guy can do this. And I started getting extra work from my superiors that I did. And apparently I did it well. And so it worked. My loud socks got me a good reputation. But people kept asking me because once you become the sock guy, anytime someone talks to you, you're still the sock guy. And so as these conversations persisted over a series of months, people started asking me, so where do you buy your socks? Like, when I go home, I'm going to have to buy some socks as well. So where do you go? And I couldn't in good faith actually recommend any of my socks to these people because I actually didn't like them, all of them, every single pair of crazy socks that I'd been collecting over many, many years. And these were dress socks, by the way. We're in business suits. They would all fall down around my ankles. They were too itchy. I didn't like the designs. And so, as I explained before, I had been thinking about starting a video game that had fallen through. I had the bug. I figured, well, if it isn't going to be a video game, why don't I try and make my own line of socks that at least I would like them. So if it fails, I'm going to have socks for life.
And let me ask you real quick, how much did failing at your first idea help you push you farther into your second idea?
Well, it just kind of opened the floodgates. I think that in the military, we are, for better or for worse, conditioned to believe that you go to a school, acquire a set of skills, and then you go out and execute those skills, and then you kind of get some advanced training, et cetera. That's not the way that business works. And it took me going through the process to realize that business is relatively straightforward. The resources exist in triplicate, on the internet. There are any number of websites that can explain how to incorporate a limited liability corporation, a Delaware C corporation, companies that'll do it for you. And so it was just a process of discovery, really.
And that's one of the things I like to emphasize on the show is that entrepreneurship is a process. I mean, that's how they teach it in schools. It really is a process, and I like to emphasize that it's not about that one great idea that's going to make you a multimillionaire. take that first idea that comes to you and try to run it through the process. And what you're really learning is the process more than anything. It's more like the military planning process. You learn the process. You can take any idea or any business and run it through the process. And that's why I wanted to ask if going through it the first time helped getting through it the second time.
That's absolutely right. So we're going to talk about socks, but just briefly, I have gone through the process now 3 different times with 3 different companies. And just to show you as a for example, the first time I tried to incorporate a company, it cost $10,000, all the legal fees and associated fees. The second time,
ouch.
Right. Lesson learned.
Yeah.
The second time around $3,000. The third time, $1,000. Now, things that happened in between then, technology got better. Technology helped, but also my knowledge base helped. And now people come to me and they're like, hey, I'm doing X, Y, or Z. Can you help? And just through my experience, I now know more. I can identify potential pitfalls that the person might experience. I can give better recommendations. Now, I'm not an expert, but I have enough information to be of help, I guess you could say.
Absolutely. So you're starting down this road of, you've taken the call sign sock guy to a whole new level and decided, and you looking into actually starting your own sock business. Yeah. So one of my mentors, gave me the call sign socks. But look, the process took a long time, and it was not overnight. I decided I was going to try to start a sock company, and it literally took 6 months of unreturned phone calls, unanswered emails, even trips down to North and South Carolina to find the right factories to stick with the vision. Because the vision was a completely American-made product to the highest global standards. So socks are made on machines, they're knitted, and they're knitted according to what I think most listeners would relate to, something akin to a thread count, like with a bed sheet. It's called a needle count on a sock. So the best needle count machines in the world are 200 needle count. That's 200 loops per square inch. Most socks that you buy, athletic socks, are around 90, maybe 100, maybe 120. Most dress socks, 120 to 150. There's one company, there's one great company that makes a 200 needle count machine. And again, I learned all this stuff after I decided to start a sock company. So we found a manufacturer outside Raleigh that has 200 needle count machines. It took us 3 months to find them. And then we found a company, an American company that makes 19 micron merino wool, also in the United States, in South Carolina. Then we had to go out and find American nylon producers, American spandex producers, and then bring it all together, knit the socks, find an American packaging manufacturer, figure out how to ship things from point A to point B. And then, we launched it over Kickstarter. But it wasn't simple. It took a long time, and it took a lot of willingness to just keep picking up the phone, keep sending emails, and not settling for what was going to be a subpar product had we stuck with the first factory that we found, or the second factory that we found, or the third factory that we found. We were just dedicated to the principle, which was the best socks made in America. Wow. In the beginning, how did you know what you were actually striving for? I mean, it's easy to say I want to make the best socks in America, but how did you define what the best sock is? Whether it be, it needs to be 68% merino wool, or it needs to be, the makeup of it, or how did you figure all that out?
The percentages we relied on our industry experts, the owners of the factories, to tell us what they found to be the best mix of threads. But in terms of how we define the best sock, again, these are dress socks, they're not athletic socks. And so we wanted socks that were over the calf so that they wouldn't fall down. We wanted bright colors that wouldn't fade. And we wanted hypoallergenic, moisture-wicking material, and that was the merino wool. And then we just went about buying the best of all of those things. So the dye process that we used, most other sock companies don't use the same dye process because it's more expensive. We dye our nylon to match the wool, which is also not done because it adds additional cost. But what we wanted to be able to do is walk away from the project knowing that we didn't sacrifice anything. We made the best product on the market, and we could kind of hang our heads high. And that's part of the advantage of doing it while still on active duty, which I'm currently on active duty, is that, look, roof's paid for, food's paid for. I get up and I do my 9-to-5 job every day. And then I come home and I do this for fun. And the risk of failure is quite low. The only thing I have to gain is experience and some good stories.
Did you bring in partners or folks along the way to assist you with this, or were you pretty much a one-man show?
I have 2 partners, one of whom is a friend of a friend that I met here. And another one is a guy that I went to officer candidate school with, who just got out of the Navy, but is a naval supply officer, but also incredibly well-dressed. And he brings to the table just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the history of color, cut, shape, fabric, etc. Just a real resource and someone who can really unpack clothing, and its meaning.
Yeah. I'll have to introduce you to Antonio Centeno. He was a Marine, owner of Real Men, Real Style, and a couple other things. And he might be interested in your products. I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So, are you up and running now? Are you actually producing socks? Have you actually taken the socks to market? Where's that at?
So we launched on Kickstarter. We raised around $55,000, and we just started delivering those socks about 3.5 months ago. We have fulfilled our Kickstarter orders, and now we sell retail on our website, which is penancehall.com. Penance, like pay your penance. And so we're running low on the initial colors that we made. We've made some additional, they're called colorways, which is like the design of a specific version of sock. Mm-hmm. And so we should be getting our second shipment in the next few weeks. And though we haven't started making profits, we have been making money. So we've been making money and then just completely reinvesting it into the company.
Yeah, well, you're making sales. I mean, that's a great step. They're actually selling.
That's right. So we've sold somewhere on the order of $70,000 to $80,000 worth of socks so far.
That's phenomenal. What is that, like 7 or 8 pairs?
Like 20 or 30. Yeah.
So what is the price? What kind of price range are we looking at for? Is it all over the board, or are they falling within a tight range of price?
So our socks retail for $35 a pair.
Uh-huh.
For our Kickstarter backers, we offer lifetime pricing at $20 a pair for 3 specific colorways. That's what they're called. But for everybody else, they retail for $35. Occasionally, we'll put them on sale for either $30 or $25, but it's for a very limited time. But just to give you perspective, the socks cost upwards of $10 to manufacture and deliver to a customer. And so that's the other reason why I think it was such an advantage for us to start this while on active duty, which is that anyone else in the clothing industry, if they were to look at our books or our business practice, they would say that we're crazy, because most clothing companies won't even start considering going into a certain area of the business unless they're at a very minimum making 200% on the product. Mm-hmm. And that's like triple discount, never gonna see these low prices again or something. So walk into a Ralph Lauren store and you see a polo shirt on like triple discount for $29 or $34. And that means that they probably made it and got it shipped to the United States. And I'm just guessing here, but there's no way they paid more than $5 to $7 for that shirt.
Even at the super ultra price.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, maybe 10. maybe. But just knowing what I know, I mean, and they manufacture abroad. And so they're selling it for a 10x to 20x markup when they sell it for $61 or whatever the normal price is. And all that money goes to advertising, and all that money goes to, it gets returned to shareholders to a certain degree. And so, we didn't want to do that. That wasn't our business model. We wanted to make something where quite literally the value was in the product.
Speaking of Kickstarter, do you have any words of wisdom, or was that a learning experience also, putting together a Kickstarter campaign?
Yeah, it's easy, but it's also hard. And there is a lot of stuff that you need to do if you're going to try and crowdfund. The quick answer is read Tim Ferriss's Hacking Kickstarter blog post. That's about a 75% solution. There's a lot of stuff that we did in order to be effective at crowdfunding. And I'd say that if any of your readers are considering it, just have them shoot me an email and I can talk to them offline. But it's a great tool. For those of you who don't know, crowdfunding enables you to pre-sell your product. So what we did is we shot a video. We had a bunch of text on a web page that was managed by this website called Kickstarter, kickstarter.com. And what happened is that people peruse this website and they watch these videos, or they read the text that people have put up. And the text, in our case, said, hey, we want to start a sock company. In order to do it, we need to raise $35,000. If you back us, if you give us a donation of $20, when we're done making the socks, we'll send you a pair of socks. And so that's what happened. We had over 950 people do that. They took a risk. They gave us their money ahead of time, and 9 months later, they got socks in return.
That's a pretty good tactic. Because one of the things about Kickstarter is people aren't just going to give you money and not want something. I mean, it may be something intangible they want, but the idea of giving them something tangible, like you get a pair of socks and it's only $20, is definitely a good tactic. And so I'm sure that helps your campaign quite a bit.
Yeah. And there's a lot of good lessons learned out there. People have written a lot about crowdfunding and strategies and tactics when it comes to that. But like I said, check out that Tim Ferriss article, or have your listeners send me an email. More than happy to talk about it. I've definitely provided input to a bunch of other people who have since done crowdfunding campaigns, especially in the style area, but in other campaigns as well. In fact, I have a friend who is going live in the next few days with a book that teaches kids how to write cursive in an hour. And they've been working really hard on it. I just kind of looked over their campaign and gave them a few comments. But crowdfunding has been used for movies. It's been used for video games. It's been used for board games, for clothing lines, just a ton of stuff, electronics. So it's a great way if you think you have an idea, if you're willing to put in, I'd say it probably took us around 2 months to prepare to run a Kickstarter campaign. But if you have an idea and you're not sure that other people are going to like it, you can run a Kickstarter campaign and you can use that to gauge interest before having to lay out, say, the $50,000 to order a minimum run of whatever product you want to order and sell.
Well, yeah, I spent about a month of my time trying to put together a Kickstarter campaign to start this podcast, and put all that stuff together, and then they turned me down. They came back and said, your idea isn't creative enough.
Is this Kickstarter or was this Indiegogo?
No, it was Kickstarter.
Huh.
I've heard they've since relaxed their standards a little bit, because I think Indiegogo was giving them a run for their money or something, but I don't know. Anyways, I didn't let it get in my way. But,
and that's the other good lesson, is that have a plan B.
The point about Kickstarter is there's a lot to learn. It's not like you just throw your idea up and people are going to give you money. It really is. You basically are creating an entire business plan in order to raise money. And there's some phenomenal experts that will do your whole campaign for you if you're trying to get enough money, and they'll take about a third of it in order to do your campaign for you. But if you're trying to get 40, 50 grand, you don't mind giving them 10 or 15 of it, they'll do the whole thing for you. I mean, you still end up with more money than you had when you started.
Yeah.
And it's just a different way to go, because running the campaign yourself and putting it all together, it is a lot of work. I mean, it's basically like starting a business that's a business in and of itself, just doing that. And of course, you got to follow through with delivering those socks once you have success.
Yeah.
All right. So we're getting close to the end of our time here. If you could just one last shout out for any still on active duty or veterans or guys getting ready to transition that are looking to start their own business, whatever it may be. What good tidbits of advice would you have for somebody out there listening?
There is a great nonprofit veteran service organization that I'd like to give a shout out to. It's called the Commit Foundation. It's run by a woman named Anne Marie Craig, and they are dedicated to helping veterans make successful transitions to the private sector. It's a fantastic program. They run workshops all over the country, and they help people prepare for transition. They help you find mentors, and I've just found them to be incredibly helpful for me and other individuals. And so I would say that that's a great resource to check out. And then, like I said, bloggers like you or people like Tim Ferriss, the information is out there. And I think that especially for us military people, you kind of have to break out of the mindset that, well, if the military had wanted me to be a entrepreneur, it would have sent me to MOS school or something.
Exactly. Very good points. I've never heard of the Commit Foundation. It sounds like a phenomenal program. Again, just another one of those great programs out there designed to help veterans transition into entrepreneurship or the civilian sector, whatever they may desire. You just got to go find it. You just got to go do it, and you got to make it happen. No one's going to come along and spoon feed it to you, and you're not going to get an MOS designator out of it from the military. So it's got to be something you want, and you got to make your own decisions and got to go find the help. And the help is there. You just have to ask for it. You don't have to do it alone, but you do have to initiate, and you're going to have to put the effort into it.
Yeah, that's right.
Any other shout outs you had, and make sure you finish up by telling us how we can get a hold of you. I don't know if you want to give us your email address, or we just go to the website and find you there.
Yeah. So feel free to send me an email at j.steinman@penancehall.com. Or if you go to Penance Hall, there's a contact us tab. Feel free to send us an email through that. But more than willing to talk to people and tell them about some of the more finely tuned lessons learned that I have acquired having gone through the process, or link them up with some other resources. But I would just say Google is your friend. That's how I've learned most of this stuff. Literally just the internet.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Don't be afraid. It's all out there.
All right, Josh, thanks for sharing your story with us. Phenomenal success story so far. I look forward to staying in touch with you and hearing how Penancehall.com sock company goes in the future.
Thanks very much, Joe. Thanks for having me.
The Top 7 Paths to Freedom is my free gift to you for listening to the show, featuring 7 great ways for a veteran to take their first step into the exciting world of entrepreneurship. To receive your free gift, go to veteranonthemove.com, or if you're listening on a mobile device, you can text the word veteran to 38470. Thank you for listening to Veteran on the Move, your pathfinder to freedom. If you like the show, leave us a review on iTunes. Reviews are always greatly appreciated. So until next time, this veteran is Oscar Mike.